You know what's strange? Most people don't realize they're being manipulated while it's happening. Not because they're weak, not because they're naive, but because the manipulation doesn't come wrapped in cruelty. It comes wrapped in concern, in curiosity, in questions that sound harmless, even caring. And the scariest part? The people who ask these questions often look calm, reasonable, even kind. They smile while slowly pulling the ground out from under your sense of self. And by the time you notice something feels off, you're already doubting your own thoughts. Maybe you felt that strange heaviness after certain conversations. Nothing bad was said, no argument happened. Yet you walk away feeling smaller, quieter, more unsure than before. You replay the conversation in your head, wondering what you did wrong, wondering why your confidence suddenly feels shaky. That's not random. That's not sensitivity. That's psychological pressure delivered quietly, through questions designed to disarm you. And tonight, I want to talk to you about that. Because once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. And more importantly, you'll finally understand why certain people always leave you feeling emotionally tired. It usually starts small. Someone asks you a question that feels slightly off. Something like, "Why are you always so sensitive?" Or, "Don't you think you're overreacting?" They say it with a calm tone, maybe even a soft smile. It doesn't sound like an attack, it sounds like concern. But your chest tightens anyway. Because deep down, something inside you knows. That question wasn't meant to understand you. It was meant to make you doubt yourself. That's how toxic people work. They don't scream, they don't always insult. They slowly shift the ground beneath your feet until you no longer trust your own emotional balance. The first thing they often do is question your reality. They'll ask things like, "Are you sure that's what happened?" Or, "Maybe you're remembering it wrong." And at first, you try to explain. You replay the moment in your head. You start second-guessing your own memory. The problem isn't that you're wrong. The problem is that you've been pulled into defending your perception instead of honoring it. Over time, this wears you down. You stop trusting your instincts. You start asking them for validation about things you used to feel confident about. And that's exactly where they want you. Unsure, off balance, dependent on their version of the truth. Then comes the second kind of question, the one disguised as concern. They'll say something like, "Are you okay? You seem different lately." At first it sounds caring, but notice the pattern. They never ask how they can support you. They never ask what changed. They simply label you as the problem. Now you're not just confused, you're defending your emotional state. You start explaining yourself. You apologize for your tone, your mood, your reactions. Slowly, your emotions start feeling like something you need to justify. And the more you explain, the more power they gain. Because healthy people ask questions to understand. Toxic people ask questions to control the narrative. Then there's the most dangerous kind of question, the one that hits your identity. Why are you so insecure? Why do you always make things difficult? Why can't you just be normal? These questions don't ask for answers. They assign blame. They define you in a way that shrinks you. And if you hear them often enough, you start internalizing them. You start seeing yourself through their eyes. You begin to wonder if maybe you really are too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too complicated. But here's the truth most people never tell you. Emotionally healthy people don't need to reduce others to feel powerful. Toxic people ask these questions because they're uncomfortable with accountability. They can't handle self-reflection, so they turn the spotlight on you. They make your reactions the problem, so they don't have to look at their behavior. And the scariest part is how subtle it is. It doesn't feel like abuse. It feels like confusion. Like something's always slightly off. Like you're walking on emotional eggshells without knowing why. You replay conversations in your head at night. You rewrite what you should have said. You feel guilty for being upset, even when something genuinely hurt you. That's not weakness. That's the result of psychological erosion. Here's where the shift begins. At some point, maybe after one too many nights lying awake, you start noticing a pattern. Not in them, in how you feel around them. You realize you're calmer when they're not around. You breathe easier when you don't have to explain yourself. And for the first time, you allow a quiet thought to form. Maybe I'm not the problem. That thought can feel terrifying. Because it changes everything. It means you have to see the dynamic clearly. It means you can't unsee the manipulation once you recognize it. And that's where real healing begins. Not with confrontation, not with dramatic speeches, but with awareness. You start listening differently. You notice when a question is meant to understand versus when it's meant to control. You stop rushing to defend yourself. You pause. You breathe. You answer less. You explain less. You realize that you don't owe clarity to people who thrive on confusion. You begin to protect your emotional space not with anger, but with quiet boundaries. Sometimes that looks like changing the subject. Sometimes it looks like saying, "I don't want to talk about this." And sometimes it looks like simply walking away. And here's the surprising part. When you stop feeding the pattern, it loses its power. Toxic people rely on emotional reactions. They rely on your need to be understood. When that supply dries up, they either change or they drift away. And if they drift away, let them. Because peace is not found in explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It's found in choosing yourself gently, consistently, without guilt. You don't need to become cold. You don't need to become distant. You just need to become aware. Aware of how you feel in someone's presence. Aware of the subtle weight certain conversations leave behind. That awareness is your protection. And if you're listening to this right now, feeling something click inside your chest, let me tell you something important. You're not broken. You were just listening to the wrong voices for too long. The moment you start trusting your inner sense again, that quiet discomfort, that subtle tension, you begin to come back to yourself. And that's where your power has always been. Not in proving your worth, not in explaining your pain, but in recognizing when something doesn't feel right and honoring that truth. You don't need to fight. You don't need to justify. You don't need to convince anyone. You just need to listen to yourself again. And once you do, everything changes.